Hi, this is Robert Plenick, the owner of Brutal Iron Gym. In today's video, we're going to be doing a chest and back workout. In the beginning here, I'm just going to be making my intra-workout drink and talking about what the workout will be. So for the workout, we're going to be doing chest and back together. The reason why I like to do this is I've been really wanting to thicken my chest. I want to have a nice wide but also thick chest and grow my back. I want to build the upper back kind of between the shoulder blades, the middle and lower trap area, all the bumps on the back side of the upper shoulder, rear delts and all that. So in order to increase the stimulus for those muscles, I've been training them on back-to-back days. So I'll do chest and back today and I'll do chest and back again tomorrow. The benefit of that is by doing them on back-to-back days, I can increase my volume, but I don't need to increase the heaviness of the individual lifts. This is helpful because it reduces stress on joints, and I have old bicep injuries that prevent me from being able to go very heavy on back work. So this is a great way for me to get that extra stimulus for the back, but not have to go heavy in order to get kind of the maximum amount of volume that my back could actually do per week and actually recover from. So rather than having to have one horribly crazy intense back workout where I would have to do very heavy weight, I would rather do these back-to-back workouts because then I don't have to go as heavy, which saves the stress on the biceps. And then my chest, I didn't know this when I was younger, kind of like starting in my bodybuilding career, but I have very short upper arm bones. So that made all of my chest press movements mostly tricep dominant. So I do very little, maybe once or twice a month, tricep isolation movements. Most of my tricep growth has come from chest movements. Now, unfortunately, that meant I didn't get good chest growth. So I got pretty good arm size. I have had my arms up to over 20 inches when they're pumped, but I didn't get very good chest growth. So I'm fixing that, and one of the ways is to do a lot more chest flies. So I'll do a lot of chest isolations compared to presses. When I do a press, I always make sure I'm pre-fatigued, and I do a chest isolation first. So I'll do some type of chest fly before I would do a chest press. The benefit is I get a lot more focused work into my chest now by doing the isolative stuff first. The downside is you can't use as much weight load due to the pre-fatigue from all the isolation work. So therefore, you're not maximizing the recovery capacity of the chest since you're not able to go as heavy, meaning the chest would be ready to be trained again more frequently than what my program would ideally allow, meaning I would have to kind of pull back or delay a different body part in order to get my chest in at a better frequency. So to combat that, I do chest on back-to-back days. That allows me to get the greater intensity, the greater volume of workload in during the week, but not have to bump a different muscle, to make it more delayed than what I'd really want. So doing chest and back together and then doing them on back-to-back days is a great way to solve both of the problems that I have. So the problem with the biceps and the back training, and then the problem with the triceps wanting to take over on my chest training. So that's what I'm going to be doing today. Is I'm going to do chest and back the first day together, and then we'll talk about exercise selection. So for the shake, what I have in here is amino acids, which is good, quick, ready to use, broken down protein, so my body can have that during the workout. I also put in carnivore protein powder. They're both fruit punch, that actually tastes pretty good together. This gives me a little bit of a higher protein content, and I'll sit most of it towards the back end of the workout, and then I'll be still having another meal afterwards, but this gives me a little bit of a protein boost. So in total, I have about 30 grams of protein here in beef isolate and the amino acids. I also added some caffeine powder, just for a little bit of an energy boost. Then niacin, which I like because it makes you feel kind of warmed up in your joints. And then acetyl L-carnitine, which is supposed to be for like fat utilization. So it helps if your body's starting to break down fats for energy, helps that process just happen a little better. That's more so like a dietary supplement when you're in a caloric deficit and pushing for contest. But I like using it because if it gives me like, a 0.1% of extra fat burning, I'll take it because it's pretty cheap. So those supplements are mostly from NutriCost. The amino acids, then the caffeine, the niacin, the carnitine, and then carnivore is from Muscle Meds. The beef isolate I like because I just have a better digestibility with it compared to like egg or milk type proteins. So that just has worked out very well for me. So that's what's in the drink. So I'll sip on this and we'll get started. Okay, to get started with the workout, what I'm going to choose to do is start with cable crossovers. This is a Sorenex Apex rack, so it has like a rack in the middle where you do barbell movements, and then it has functional cable columns on the outsides. So I'll set that up, get ready for cable flies, and then at that same height, I'll be using the rack as kind of like a base, like a post for support, and I'll be doing a one-arm row. This has turned out to be a pretty good combination. I like it because the chest flies help to open up the chest, get some blood flow into the shoulders, kind of warm up everything. And then if I want to go heavy into a movement after that, everything kind of feels ready for it. So this again is that pre-exhaust concept where I get my chest stimulated first, so that way any presses I go into, my chest is pre-fatigued, it's going to fail before my triceps would. So it allows the chest pressing movements to actually be more chest focused and chest damage, rather than what they would typically be if everything was fresh. My triceps die first because that short upper arm bone. And then the standing rows I like just because it gets a really good stretch, good contraction. And then I also have in the position the freedom to kind of like raise my elbow so I can pull a little higher to hit more into like rear delts and little like some traps. And then you can also pull kind of middle, or you can pull lower to get mostly lats. So there's a lot of personalization with the position, which I like because I can kind of go with what I feel like for that day, like what I want to target or what feels good. But it's that same setup, quick and easy every time. So it's just a known entity that I can then play with. So I'll get that set up and then we'll get into the warm-up sets. Okay. For the setup today, what I'm going to be choosing is going to be a height kind of like around my chest height. And I'll play with that a little bit different each time I work out. But this is one of my favorite heights because it gets a really good, like when you pull back, it gets a really good stretch. But I don't feel like if it's super high, you end up getting like more of the lower outer pec. If it's super low, it's just very weight limiting. And you will get the outer pec and a little bit of the upper inner pec, but it's not like a dominant type movement because it's a lot lighter due to that position. So that's more of like a second chest day kind of thing. Since I know on the first day, I want to go heavier and it's the more dominant day. On the second day, I might pick a little bit of a lighter variation because then I actually don't want the heaviest weight load. I want something on the second day that kind of restarts the damage and the workload, but doesn't have to be maximal weight load to be effective, because on the second day you've already damaged the joint, the muscles, you've pre-fatigued everything, everything's a little beat up. So that would be the day to do kind of those more positional limiting or weight load limiting type movements. Okay, so actually this is all the way set up. We'll get into our first working sets now. Well, not working sets, warm-up sets. Warm-ups are going well. I got 3 sets of 20 reps in with the chest flies, and then 3 sets of 10 reps on each arm for the row. Typically, I aim for 3, 4, maybe 5 warm-up sets. This is actually feeling really good on the chest already. So I'm going to drop from 20 reps down to 10, and then work up to what I feel like are 2 to 3 really hard sets of 10. So likely I'll have 1 or 2 more like warm-ups or like prep sets, and then I'll get into like the heaviest, more aggressive sets. So I'll be doing sets of 10 for the chest flies, and then on the rows I'm going to continue to get heavier. What I'm probably going to do is some sets of 10 that are around like say a 70-80% of like intensity maximum. So sometimes people use a scale called an RPE, rate of perceived exertion. It would be like a 1 to 10, but nobody uses anything under 5. So 5 is like I'm moving, but it's not miserable. 6 is, it's not miserable, but it's not like a warm-up. It's getting a little bit of effort. 7 is like, okay, I'm having to try some. 8 is, ugh, this is really taking some effort. 9 is, holy crap, that was really hard. 10 is, I died, or I almost died. So I'll be doing a lot of sets at like 7. And I like that because it gets a lot of volume into the back, and it starts to accumulate that fatigue at a lower intensity, so my bicep doesn't become a limiting factor. So I'll get a lot of sets of 10 into the rows as I'm doing my flies. And then when the flies are maxed out and I finish the working sets, I'll probably continue to do 1 or 2 more sets of rows. And on the last set of rows, I'll add a big drop set, like a multi-drop set, as a good way to kind of burn out that muscle. So I'll check in along the way, but I figured I'd let you know what we're doing is we're dropping down to sets of 10 now on the flies, gonna work up to 2 to 3 really hard sets of 10, and then the whole time I'm continuing to add weight and continue to push the rows to get more volume in. I found a weight that I like for the flies, so I figured I'd do a set and just talk a little bit about the technique. So on the working sets, what I look to do is when I'm getting a stretch at the extension, I want to make sure my elbow remains slightly bent. So I don't want to lock my arm out, I want a slight bend. And I want to rotate where my elbow point angles behind me, it points directly behind me. So as I would stretch, I want my elbows to kind of rotate up so I get that full stretch right through here. What I don't want to do is have my elbows down and I'm not getting a full stretch, and it would also start to annoy the inside of my joint of my elbow. So we don't want our elbows pointing to the ground. I want to rotate to where my elbow points behind me and let the cable pull the shoulder up and get a good stretch. Then from there, when I come together, I want to still keep my arms slightly bent. So I don't want to come together and then try to lock out my arms. That'll be very limiting in your position. And again, it can start to annoy the elbow. So we want to keep a slight bend, and I want to pause. What I like about this variation is a standing variation is I don't have any back support, so I have to move a little bit slower, be more in control, not let the weight kind of throw me. So this forces a better quality. I will do like seated flies with my adjustable bench from time to time, and that's great for a little bit of an overload, a little bit of a change of stimulus. But when I have no back support, I do prefer that because it forces more discipline and more mind-muscle connection. So that way there's no momentum, I'm not just throwing the weight around. So I'm gonna go ahead and try a set of 10 here, and keeping those things in mind, slight elbow bend, good extension with my elbow pointing behind me, and then when I come together, My arms are still slightly bent, and I'm gonna pause so I can really focus on flexing and squeezing the chest. Okay, so let's get into a working set here. Whew, okay, so that to me is a very good quality working set. Could I be a little faster, try to get a couple extra reps? Sure, but if that doesn't really extend the time under tension, meaning I'm just moving faster but getting more reps with the same amount of time, it's not really going to help anything. And if I'm using momentum, I'm getting sloppy, again, it's not getting that good chest growth. So the point of doing the isolation movement first, to isolate my chest first, is to make sure the chest is actually the one that's getting fatigued. So I don't want to cheat on an isolation movement because you're defeating the whole purpose. So that was a really good working set. That is the type of quality that I would look for when I'm thinking of any exercise for good working sets. Now, every once in a while, with building muscle, you're not too concerned. Well, I don't want to say that you're not concerned with strength, but I'm not going to sit here and do 1 rep maxes or like even sets of 2 or 3. That's going to be a good strength stimulus, but it's not going to be a great growth stimulus. I'd have to do a lot of sets, and then you're going to accumulate a lot of joint stress. Then that limits the volume you can do for overall growth. But getting down to sets of, say, arguably 5 to 10, like 5 to 8, those might be, like 5 to 8 might be a lower range than what most people would think of for like bodybuilding or muscle growth. But that's a good area to sometimes drop into to get some kind of strength development along with muscle development, because it is important in the long term to increase the amount of weight you use, which increases your volume. So it does help with progression for growth in the long run. So sets of 5 to 8 are heavy for muscle growth, but they're good to get into. But even in sets of 5 to 8, I would still want to be very controlled. I don't want momentum. I don't want to be just throwing it around. Again, we're more so interested in the outcome of what we're doing rather than hitting a random number or hitting a random weight. We want the quality to be the biggest focus. Okay, so now we'll get into a couple working sets of the rows. I finished the working sets for the flies, felt like that was a really good stimulus. So now I'm going to finish up the working sets for the rows. I'll probably do 1 or 2 more sets of 10 and then decide on what weight I want to use for that multiple drop set. So I'll bring you along with that. And whenever weights get heavy for back training, I do use wrist straps. So these just go around your wrist, and then it cinches tight on the wrist, and then you wrap this tail end around the handle or the barbell, and that just helps with the grip. I really like that for back exercises because you still need to hold on, but you more so have to just kind of create like a hook with your hand whenever you're doing back movements. You can wrap your thumb if you want, but if you just hook it with your fingers where you're not trying to like crush the handle, you're just hooking with your fingers. And then you think of pulling from your back contracting, meaning I want to start the contraction, start the movement by squeezing my shoulder blade to my backbone, and then I want to drive my elbow behind me. If you think of originating back movements from the backbone, so shoulder to backbone, shoulder blade to backbone, and then drive the elbow back, that really helps make sure that the back is doing the movement, not your bicep. So using the straps helps you focus just on that hook, gives you a little bit of extra aid on the grip. If you have any grip issues or limitations, you can reduce the use of straps till just like the last kind of heaviest sets of back. So that way you still stimulate your grip. However, you don't want your back exercises to be limited by your grip. You don't want the first thing to fail in a back exercise to be your grip. Just like for me in like chest presses, if I want my chest to be the dominant it's what gets the damage. So if I'm doing dumbbell chest presses, I want to grow my chest. I want my chest to be maximally damaged before anything else gives out. Well, since I have that short upper arm bone, my triceps take the maximum damage. So doing the flies, doing the isolation stuff, make sure that my chest is pre-fatigued. So then when I do the chest presses, my chest dies first. So same theory and everything else we do is whatever our intended muscle is that we want that exercise to maximally work, we want to make sure that nothing else fails first. So using wrist straps does help. I really wouldn't worry about it limiting your grip development. You're going to do a lot of grip work and a lot of other things you do. However, you can always add extra grip work if you wanted. So for example, I actually tore the fat pad and the connective tissues up into my pinky and ring finger before. It was just a freak accident in the gym. I was helping a client move some stuff. And to be honest, I don't even remember when it happened. I just remember the next day I kind of woke up, my hand was feeling kind of weak. I was having trouble like opening things, holding on to things. And my grip actually was so bad that I couldn't even deadlift like 405 at the time without, like, my hand would just drop. So I couldn't hold it. So I had to retrain those muscles, still ended up getting up to a 700-pound deadlift, but I needed specific grip work to build those tissues. So if you have a grip problem, it's actually better to just add grip training rather than limiting your back development and using your back, like back training as grip training. Don't do that. So you still want to get your back development in. So wrist straps on. I'll get a couple, 1 or 2 more sets of 10, figure out the weight I want for my heavy drop set. I think I found a good weight. I'm going to go with 160 pounds. So the last warm-up was, well, not, I wouldn't count these as warm-ups. They're working sets. They're just not too all-out failure, but they're definitely beyond a warm-up. So it's that kind of medium range, that 7 or 8 RPE that's giving me that volume that I wanted. So I was at 120 pounds. So now I'm going to go ahead and jump up to 160, do a set of somewhere between 5 and 10, whatever I feel like is still good quality. Then I'll probably drop down to 120, then drop to 90. So the first drop's gonna be 40, the second drop's only gonna be 30. The reason why is 160 to 120, and then another 40 might feel like it's too big of a drop. So making a big drop on the first one is helpful, but then smaller drop on that second drop is actually helpful due to just the percentage of weight change. Meaning 40 pounds off of 160 is a smaller percentage than 40 pounds off of 120. So as the weights go lower, the drop should get smaller. And that way you can still get a decent stimulus out of those second and third drop weights if you do multiple drop sets. That's just a nice little kind of rule of thumb, is the lighter you go, the smaller the drop should be. And that's just kind of playing with it over time and training clients, training myself. You'll find as you play with multiple drop set as an intensity technique, you'll find there are certain exercises you like it on, some you don't. When I have to change a lot of weight or change a setup or get up out of a machine to change things, I tend not to do a drop set. I'll do rest pause, because that way I can just stay in place. So maybe I'll do 10 reps, count to 10 seconds, try another couple reps, count to 10 seconds, try another couple reps, but the weight stays the same. Whereas in something like this, like I can be back here doing my set, step forward, pull the pin, get back in place pretty quick. This is a great setup for a drop set. Pretty quick transition time. So I'll use this technique on something like this. Plus, if I'm working around any kind of injury concern, where if I have a pre-damaged biceps, maybe you have bad shoulders, bad back, bad knees, whatever it might be, a drop set is nice because if you want to push intensity, but the weight goes down, that keeps the safety higher. Whereas if you're pushing intensity on rest pause, keeping the weight the same, it gets a little riskier in that second and third bouts of effort. So if you have any kind of injury concern or something you're working around, multiple drop set is a better technique, a safer technique than a rest pause. So we'll get into this. We'll see how it goes. Oh, okay, that was, whoa, that burned. Okay, good stuff. So, oh, that was nice. Okay, that was good. So, the reason why I did 5 to 10 reps, it ended up being 10, 10, 10, but I would err on the side of the lower rep range as a target when you do multiple drops, because as you add each bout of effort together, you're adding the volume. If you went like, say, 20 reps on the first one, then 15, then 10, you're getting more muscle endurance than you're getting muscle growth due to the just total accumulation of time under tension. The weight would be kind of moderate. The time under tension is probably going to collectively be, up over 60 seconds. We wouldn't typically want 60-second plus stimulus as a muscle growth thing. So we kind of more so want to stay in the range of 20 to 40. That's kind of like the sweet spot. Every once in a while we'll go outside of that, but 20 to 40 seconds is a good sweet spot. So 5 to 10 reps is, might take me 10, 15 seconds to get the first set. Then I drop, do another 10, 15, another 10, 15. That's 30 to 45 seconds. That's pretty good. That hits around that top end of that range. But we got to go a little heavy since we were only doing 10 reps, 5 to 10 reps on each bout of effort. So the idea of a multiple drop set for growth is to use lower than normal rep range, because as you add each bout of effort together, it adds up to a decent amount of time. Then you can see the transition was pretty quick between weight changes. I try to make them less than 10 seconds. If I can, less than 5. These were probably like 2 or 3 second transitions, which is great. The purpose of this is to annihilate and damage and kind of beat up the tissue. I don't want to, it sounds funny, but I'm not trying to do this well. I'm trying to do it to where it damages the tissue. So maybe I set the goal as 10, 10, 10. I got 10, 10, then 3, but the tissue's beat up, and I'm like, that's perfect. So I maybe have to change my expectations next time. And let's say our total accumulated time of the 3 bouts is less than 20 seconds. So maybe you're like, I'm gonna do 5 really heavy reps, then another 5, then another 5. Well, maybe you only get 4, then 1 and 1. Way too heavy. So we have to back that off. So it's really, there's a lot of personalization, a lot of play with it. But if I gave you a really long-winded answer, is I would aim for probably 5 to 10 reps per bout of effort. So that way your total accumulated time doesn't get too high above 40 seconds. I've talked way too long, so now I gotta do the other side. So let's see how that one goes. Those working sets went well, so that feels pretty good. So that's the first 2 movements out of the way. I did isolation for the chest, so now I'll go into some type of compound movement which uses the chest and the triceps. And then I did a row for the back, which I really like. I'm really trying to build that middle and lower trap area, the back side of the shoulders. So that was a unilateral row. Probably I'm going to pick some type of maybe a cable seated row, some variation like that, but still keep it in the row family, that kind of type of movement, so that way I can still focus on those mid-back, lower trap type muscles. So I'll get those movements set up and then I'll check back in. As you can see in the warm-up videos, I got my next exercises set up. So I'm going to do a flat dumbbell chest press, focusing on a pause at the bottom and really trying to flex and squeeze as I come up. So this isn't trying to move the most amount of weight, the most amount of reps. It's really trying to isolate and feel the chest as the main driver in the movement. So again, it's a pause at the bottom, make sure I have a good stable position. I don't want to relax into like muscle stretch. I want to hold that position and then try to flex through the chest. And at the top, you'll notice I'm not going to lock out my arms. I don't want to transfer too much of the weight to my tricep. So I'm just going to flex the chest, back down, pause, flex the chest. It's really that mind-muscle connection, that constant tension on the chest muscles. And then for the back, I'm going to do a seated cable row. I have the cable set at a little bit of a weird kind of inclined angle. So it's still a like horizontal type row, but that angle where I'm pulling down towards myself kind of in this pathway, it really helps me feel the lower traps and the area right between my shoulder blades. Are my lats going to get somewhat involved? Sure. But in this position, I really like because it isolates the lower traps. If I were to go from a lower angle, you could argue that that brings less lats into the movement, which you would think would better isolate the mid-back, but then my upper traps start to take over. So whether I go high, that's going to be a lot of lats. If I go too low, it's going to be a lot of upper traps. So I'm trying to find just that sweet spot in the middle that allows me to feel that mid-back area that I'm really trying to grow. So I did a couple sets of, I think I did a set of 20 on the rows just to really find that position, that like kind of squeezing, contracting pathway. And then a couple sets of 10. For the presses, I've done a couple sets of 10. So now we'll go ahead and continue to add weight, go to my top end, kind of working sets. For both of these movements, I'll be aiming for 3 sets at the kind of top resistance. Again, I'm not looking for all out just technique failure. I really want the muscle contraction to be the driving force. Once I can't feel the muscle contracting in my back, or I can't feel my chest very well and just the triceps are starting to take over, I would end the sets. So I'm ending at good form failure, not just overall movement failure. So I'll go for 3 sets of 10. If I'm a little low, a little high on that, I'm okay. It's maybe an 8 to 12 range, even like an 8 to 14 or even 6 to 14. Just somewhere, like we said, in that sweet spot of time and attention of kind of 20 to 40 seconds. And the 3 working sets here on each movement is going to give me a good volume for today, knowing that tomorrow I'm coming right back in and training. Also, when I film these workouts, they take a little longer than when I don't film, so I'm running a little short on time. So I'm going to go ahead and get the 3 working sets in, and then we'll talk at the kind of end of that and finish out the video. I just finished up the 3 working sets for each movement. So the seated rows, I ended up doing, I think it was sets of 14-ish. I kind of didn't count, but I knew it was around there. I was really focusing on trying to squeeze through my back. What helps me do that is not allowing my arm to fully extend at the extension. So I want to keep my elbow slightly bent and think of spreading, like spreading my shoulder blades. So I want to spread my shoulder blades and then think of pulling and squeezing back. So the arm angle might change, like I have my arms up, but I'm tilting it down so you can see more, is it might get to like here where it's still bent, and then I'm going to squeeze and drive, stretch, squeeze and drive. So there's very small flexion, like very different than what most people might think is where you get like a full extension and then you drive and squeeze. The reason why I'm doing it with that partial extension is I really want the mid-back, not the lats. So focusing on just stretching my shoulder blades and then squeezing, stretching, squeezing, keeps the movement of the muscles just in that little area between the backbone and shoulder blades, and it keeps the lats out of it. So I was focusing on that, so I kind of wasn't counting the reps, but it was somewhere around 14. I got 3 good sets. And then the chest press, I ended up doing 3 top sets with 100 pounds, and I felt like they were pretty good squeezes, pretty good control. So I'm happy with today's workout. Now, I'll be coming back tomorrow and doing the same muscles, like I said. So typically I'll still do a pre-exhaust on my chest, like an isolated movement, and then some type of compound. But it kind of depends on how I feel. If my joints are feeling like kind of stiff, tired, achy, then the compound will be what's called an underloaded movement, where it's some weird hard setup that doesn't require a lot of weight for it to be challenging. If my joints are feeling fresh and great, then I'll do a overload concept, reverse band bench press, weighted dips, something that's heavy and aggressive. So I'll play with the loading intensity in the compound movement for the chest. And then for back, I'll do the same thing where I try to pick something that's kind of isolative in nature. I can feel the movement, and then I'll do something more compound in nature. So tomorrow I might also play with different angles. Maybe I would do, if I felt good, felt fresh, do like a barbell bent over row. Typically I would do the aggressive thing more on the first day, but today I didn't go as aggressive because I was traveling last week. I only had yesterday's workout in, and I'm right back into today. So I would like to be a little kinder to my body as I'm reestablishing my normal routine. So I'd rather save the compound movement, something more aggressive, if I feel good on day 2, than doing it on day 1, burying myself, and then not being able to do anything of good quality on day 2. So I play with the intensity in the first workout, depending on what I also want to get from the second workout. So there's a lot of nuance, there's a lot of personalization going on, but some basics that we would think of is the majority of the work is between 20 to 40 seconds of time under tension. My weekly working set total per muscle group, I want between 10 to 20 working sets. So if I do 6 today, 6 tomorrow, that gives me 12, I'm in the range. Now, I'll usually push a little higher towards that range, so I'll probably come back and do some extra chest stuff or extra back stuff later on, or if I felt good this week, next week I'll do a little extra. Like I said, today I ran short. So typically I might add a third movement for each body part, get that set count up to 9 per muscle group today, which then I would do again tomorrow and give me 18. So I will play with that. But again, 20 to 40 seconds for most time under tension working sets, 10 to 20 working sets per muscle group per week. The more you want a muscle to grow, the higher in the range. If a muscle is growing pretty well, you just want to maintain growth while other things catch up, you'd be in the low part of the range. And then I pre-exhaust to do isolated movements before compound movements, so that way I know the compound movement fatigues when the targeted muscle dies, not when something else dies or fatigues. All of that is the stuff that is consistent every time, and then everything else really changes depending on how I'm feeling that week or that day. So I thought this would be fun to share. If you have any questions about workout structures or anything that you want to hear in future videos, just let me know on our website, www.brutalirongym.com. We also have a daily podcast that has over 1,900 episodes. It covers nutrition, training, mindset, and listener Q&A. So if there's something you want to hear about in the podcast, you can let me know on our website as well. So I hope this was helpful. Hopefully it gave you some ideas. If you need anything, just reach out. And thank you for watching.